Natalia sat in the airport, tears streaming down her face. Her flight had been delayed, and her wedding was now in jeopardy. Suddenly, a fortune teller approached her. "Don't rush," she advised. "Fate will decide everything. Afterward, take the back entrance." Upon arrival, Natalia followed her advice and was frozen in shock. "Before we continue, please tell us which country you are from and your age. Enjoy listening." Natalia sat by a large window, clutching a small bouquet to her chest. Humble white roses for tomorrow's ceremony. Reflections of the departure board's letters slowly crawled across the glass. Delayed. On her lap lay a phone with the wedding chat open. The groom's parents, the florist, the officiant, her maid of honor, everyone was sending brief business-like messages. "I'll meet guests in the parking lot. The cake will be delivered to the family. Ice sculptures confirmed. Only the groom has been silent all morning." Natalia was flying in from a business trip, having meticulously planned every minute: a night's sleep at a hotel, a morning trip to the estate to try on her dress, collect the rings, and simply survive until tomorrow without unnecessary drama. The plan was crumbling. The flight had been postponed for the second time. The coffee in its paper cup had gone cold, its aroma reminiscent of bitter chocolate, while her heart felt hollow. She longed to call Alexei and hear his calm voice assuring her, "Don't worry, everything's under control." But he wasn't answering. "Child, is something wrong?" A woman in a colorful skirt and a worn leather jacket settled into the adjacent seat. Around 60 years old, with a tanned face, a crinkly smile, and observant eyes. A thin chain rested around her neck. Her hands were sinewy, like those of someone who works hard. "The flight is delayed." Natalia offered a polite smile, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "My wedding is tomorrow." "A wedding isn't a train," the stranger remarked. "You can catch a train, but a real wedding will wait for you. If it's not real, it's better not to chase it." Natalia found herself looking at the woman more closely. She didn't pat her shoulder or offer loud sympathy, nor did she suggest palm reading. She simply sat beside Natalia as if she had always been there. "I'm Maria," the woman introduced herself. "I'm going to see my granddaughter, and you, for now, don't rush. And remember, when you land, don't go through the front door, but the back entrance, quietly, without noise. You'll see what you need to see." "How do you know?" Natalia asked, surprised and smiling. "All right, let it be so. Thank you, Maria." "Thank me later," the woman waved dismissively. "Thank life when you understand why it made you wait." The loudspeaker announced that boarding would commence in 40 minutes. Natalia stood up, thanked her again, and headed for the gate. She glanced back. Maria was already conversing with a boy in a baseball cap who was afraid of flying. She sat upright, her back straight, her gaze warm. "She's kind," Natalia thought. "May her granddaughter be healthy." The plane eventually departed. Outside the window, clouds resembling wisps of cotton slowly stretched across the sky. Natalia closed her eyes, but sleep eluded her. Memories of the past week and months flooded her mind. Alexei, always glued to his phone, busy with work. Brief calls of "I'll call back later." Meetings, important appointments. "We'll sort everything out. Trust me, it will all be beautiful." The word beautiful always exhausted Natalia. She longed for simplicity. She and Alexei had met through mutual friends. He was tall, confident, with a gentle smile and a knack for listening. He courted her beautifully, never rushing, calling her his sunshine and showering her with gifts for no reason. Natalia had never had grand expectations in life. Sunday family dinners, a job where she could stand tall, a warm cup of tea in the evening. She decided that with someone like him, everything would fall into place. They had spent nearly a year preparing for the wedding, chosen an old estate outside the city, coordinated with relatives and invited friends. It seemed like the right path. The plane landed smoothly. Evening was deepening into darkness. There was that specific twilight blue freshness when the day quiets down in the air. Natalia called for a taxi and dialed Alexei's number. "The subscriber is unavailable." Once again, the wedding chat buzzed. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Her friend Genya sent a photo. "Look how they've hung the garlands. Too bad you couldn't make it this evening." Natalia replied, "I'll be there soon." And then she remembered Maria's words. "Enter through the back entrance." Nonsense, of course. Still, why not see the estate from a different perspective? Quietly, without music and toasts. The taxi turned onto a dirt road. Streetlights illuminated the entrance. The security guard nodded them in. Natalia asked to be dropped off at a side gate, the one leading to the outbuildings. As a child, she would have surely climbed over out of curiosity. Now an inexplicable inner urge compelled her. Her heart beat faster than usual. The back of an estate always looks different from the front. Here, it smelled of grass and warm metal. Buckets and neat brushes stood nearby. Light from the kitchen fell in a rectangular pool on the path. The door to the hall was ajar. Voices were clearly audible. A rehearsal, music, laughter. Natalia took a step closer, then another. "Tomorrow, no tricks," Alexei's familiar voice said. "We'll sign the papers and be done. Then we'll quietly divorce in a couple of months, calmly, without scandals. I'll say we weren't compatible. It's important for Mom to be settled and for the business not to suffer." "You think she won't notice?" Another voice chuckled. Genya, her childhood friend, the maid of honor, the person Natalia called when she felt down. Genya's voice was light, with its usual playful lilt. "She believes us." Alexei said this without malice, but with cold certainty. "She needs it to be familial, simple, easier. The main thing is, we'll finalize the deal with the partners in a month, and then that's it." Genya's voice softened. "How much longer will I be the bride's friend?" "Don't tease fate," Alexei responded lazily. "Not now. Papers first. Then we'll accidentally realize we've loved each other for a long time." He poured champagne. The faint clink of glass against glass was audible from the doorway. "You know how to wait, don't you?" At that moment, Natalia felt a chill, not from the night air, but from the shattering of her familiar world like an old mirror. She stood silently, like a stone. No screams, no tears. One thought echoed in her mind. Silence. Beyond the door, Alexei said something else. About the guests, the caterer. How everything would be beautiful. Genya laughed. The laugh, familiar from childhood, sounded entirely different now. Natalia stepped back. The sounds of the courtyard suddenly amplified, like thunder after a lightning flash. The rustling of grass, the creak of the gate, the crunch of gravel under her heels. Everything became clear, sharp. Through the back entrance, it all came flooding back. "So be it." She dialed the estate's administrator. "Yes, everything can be rescheduled." "No, cancelled." "I understand." "What a shame." "I understand." Natalia spoke calmly, asked them to send the bill to her, and to apologize to the staff who were already working. She hung up and called her parents. "Mom, the wedding is off tomorrow. I'll explain. Everything's fine." A pause on the other end. A breath. "My dear, come home." Her father didn't answer. He was asleep. And thank goodness for that. Then she opened the wedding chat and wrote, "Friends, I apologize. The event is cancelled. Personal reasons. I'll explain to each of you individually later." She silenced notifications and exited the messenger. Her phone buzzed with a desperate swarm of messages, but she didn't answer. Her heart was at peace, as orderly as a well-run kitchen, pots in their place, kettle on the stove, matches in the drawer. A woman with a tray appeared from the darkness on the path. Seeing Natalia, she quietly asked, "Can I help you?" "No, thank you," Natalia replied just as quietly. "Are you the bride?" the woman guessed, looking at her more closely. She nodded to herself and without waiting for an answer added, "Happiness doesn't wait, and neither does misfortune, especially if something happens. Go to the guard on the left. He'll let you through the gates." "Thank you," Natalia said. "And I'm sorry." "For what?" the woman asked, surprised. "Everyone is responsible for their own." Natalia walked towards the gate. The sky was slightly veiled with haze. A warm breeze carried the scent of grass and something sweet like vanilla. She pulled up her coat collar and stepped onto the road. She didn't bother calling a taxi. She walked to the bus stop. Her feet knew the way. The morning was clear. Her phone was ringing incessantly. Alexei, his mother, Zhenya, friends, her aunt from Vologda who had already bought tickets. Messages overlapped. "How could you? What happened? Let's talk. It's a misunderstanding. You misunderstood everything? Forgive me. Let's start fresh." Natalia silenced her phone completely, grabbed a small suitcase, and headed to her parents' place. Her mother opened the door quickly, embracing her tightly, just like after her first bike fall as a child. She didn't ask immediately. First she made tea, placed a butter pie on the table, and brushed away crumbs with her hand. "Well, tell me," she said calmly. "Briefly at first, then as much as you want." Natalia told her story concisely. Her mother listened silently, without gasping or scolding. Then she simply sighed and said, "It's good it happened today, not in a year. And it's good you came to us yourself, not called from a hospital in hysterics. The rest is trivial, believe me. It's just a pity about the inconvenience caused to everyone." Natalia smiled faintly. "I'm worried about the staff, about the guests." "The word pity isn't my favorite," her mother replied. "It's always about everyone else but yourself. It's not a sin to pity yourself if it's justified. Eat another piece and then call whomever you wish. The others can wait." Her father arrived home from work for lunch, took off his cap, listened over tea, and simply said, "If he's not a person, then he's not a person. Things will get better. Someone with brains on their shoulders stands firm. You're strong. Hang in there." By evening, the calls had subsided. Zhenya sent a long message. "Forgive me. I don't know how this happened. I got confused. I didn't mean anything. Life is complicated. He and I—" Natalia read halfway through and closed the window. "Life is complicated," a phrase often used to mask betrayal. She didn't want to become a judge. She simply drew a line. 2 days later, Natalia returned to the city. She contacted the administrator about the bill. She received a brief thank you, sent the payment, and felt a sense of relief. Things returned to their routine: work, kitchen, books. At night, she dreamt of the airport, a waiting lounge with soft chairs, and a departure board that inexplicably read, "Live." She woke up with a gentle smile. A week passed. Alexei's calls, Zhenya's emojis, discussions about music and cake all disappeared from her familiar life. On Sunday, Natalia went to the park simply to be in the silence. A man with a camera sat on a bench by the pond. Not young, but not old, with a kind face and an observant gaze. He seemed to be photographing the water. Natalia sat down, took out her notebook, and for the first time in a long time began to write for herself. Not to be ashamed of what she hadn't done, not to justify others' decisions, but to cherish silence. "May I ask a question?" she heard beside her. The man had approached and was smiling. "I'm shooting a project about the city in the morning. The frame should include people, but not looking at the camera, rather lost in thought. May I photograph you from behind like this? As you write, I don't focus on faces, only silhouettes. Is that okay?" Natalia nodded. "Just please remove the notebook from the frame. It's personal." "Of course." He crouched down so the lens was at water level. "I'm Andrei." "Natalia." "Do you like it here?" he asked between 2 clicks. "Yes, it's quiet here, and the ducks aren't afraid of people." "The ducks are smart," Andrei smiled. "They instantly sense who's come with bread and who's just rustling a bag." They talked for about 10 minutes, about nothing and everything. About the morning light, about the trees, about how sometimes a person needs not music, but the rustling of leaves. Andrei listened without interrupting. Natalia answered briefly. It was unusual for her that no one tried to summarize or offer advice. He didn't ask why she looked sad. Only at the end, as he put his camera back in its bag, he said, "If you ever want to see the photographs, I sometimes hang them up in the small coffee shop on the corner, unassumingly, just on the wall. Come by, they make good time tea." "I'll keep the tea in mind," Natalia smiled. They met again, by chance, at that very coffee shop. Then, it was no longer by chance. Andrei turned out to be a photographer for a local newspaper, unobtrusive and very careful with his words. He loved old films, knew the names of birds, wasn't afraid to wash dishes, and knew how to be silent beside someone so that the silence became warm. He didn't pry into Natalia's past, only once saying, "Everyone has their airports. The important thing is to realize in time which hall to enter and which exit, the main one or the back one," Natalia added. Maria, the same woman from the airport, often sat with them on the bench. It turned out her granddaughter lived in the neighborhood. They had met by chance at a bakery. Natalia bought bread, Maria bought milk, and they recognized each other without words. Maria chuckled. "So, shall we thank life?" Natalia nodded. Maria would sometimes stop by for a minute, bring pastries, and offer her simple, precise pronouncements. If you feel bad around someone, they aren't your person, it's your mistake. Correct it and live. In the autumn, Natalia changed jobs, moving to a small publishing house where punctuality and quiet kindness were valued. Her days became smooth. She often recalled the estate not with pain, but with a calm understanding. "I'm lucky I stood outside." Zhenya and Alexei's relationship didn't work out. Natalia learned this from mutual acquaintances. They had maintained a facade of beauty, but they simply lacked the strength for authenticity. In early winter, Natalia felt a persistent fatigue. She felt dizzy in the evenings and wanted to sleep longer in the mornings. She attributed it to the weather. Her mother, hearing her on the phone, simply said, "See a doctor," and no heroics. Natalia had her tests, visited the doctor, and heard a quiet, "Congratulations. Everything is fine. It's early, but the baby is developing." The office smelled of chamomile and something clean. Natalia smiled, and for the first time in months, cried. Not from resentment, but from happiness and relief. The pain of the past receded like mist in the sun. Andrei held her hand as they left the clinic. He didn't say, "I always knew." He simply said, "Thank you." And Natalia understood that those 7 letters were more important than any promises. One day, returning home, they stopped at a flower stall. On display were humble white roses, the same kind Natalia had held at the airport. She looked at them and felt a door open in her memory. The departure board reading, "Delayed." Maria in her colorful skirt. Through the back entrance. The warm darkness of the courtyard, the voices, the silence. Then yes, the road. Her mother's "Eat another piece," her father's "Hang in there," the pond and the ducks, the coffee shop, the camera, the bench, the time tea, the doctor with kind eyes. Andrei's, "Thank you." "Shall we get some?" Andrei asked, nodding at the roses. "We will," Natalia said. "For home." They walked on, unhurried. The evening was quiet and clear. At the turn toward their home, Natalia saw a familiar figure at the bus stop. Alexei. He stood alone, holding his phone, his face a mask of emptiness. He saw them and froze. His gaze flickered to Natalia's abdomen. For a second, something that had once been warmth flashed in his eyes. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but only nodded, perplexed, without strength. Natalia nodded back. Not friendly, not cold, just human. Then she turned to Andrei, took his arm, and walked on. Behind them remained a man with whom the most important thing had not happened: simplicity and truth. In winter, they bought a small crib, a soft blanket, and colorful swaddling clothes. Maria brought a charm, a small pouch of lavender, not against misfortune, but against empty words. Her mother knitted a hat. Her father silently attached a shelf and checked the windows. Andrei printed a photograph of the pond with ducks and hung it above the dresser. On the back, in pencil, he wrote, "Home is when it's quiet and warm." When their daughter was born, Natalia held her and realized that the world had simultaneously become larger and more intimate, and larger because a new life had entered it, more intimate because now all the superfluous had receded. They named the baby Varya. The name settled easily. Maria came on the 3rd day, stroked Varya's cheek, smiled, and quietly said, "Look how she breathes. Evenly, so her mother is calm." Natalia smiled back. She remembered the airport and thought that sometimes a delay isn't a punishment, but a gift of time to see what is hidden behind the curtain. In spring, they bought Varya her first stroller with soft wheels. They walked in the park, listened to the birds sing, and rejoiced that the ducks were indeed smart, swimming precisely towards those who came not to make noise. Andrei photographed Natalia's small hands and her eyes. They now held a stillness that hadn't been there before, the stillness of certainty. One day, passing the estate, Natalia stopped at the gate. The sun was shining, children were running on the path, and curtains flickered in the windows. She stood for a minute, took Andrei's hand, and said, "Let's go in." They walked around, past the kitchen, peered into the courtyard. Everything was different. Different people, different music. The gate was the same. Natalia smiled. "It's good here. Here I understood that you can take a step back to take 10 forward." "Thank you to whoever said to go through the back entrance," Andrei replied. "Thank you," Natalia agreed. They returned home. On the table stood a vase of white roses. Now they were for the home, not for a ceremony. Beside them lay her notebook. On the first page, 3 lines, written evenly. "Do not rush to where you are not expected. Do not apologize for others' decisions. Cherish those who are near, and the words that heal." In the evening, Natalia put on the kettle, poured time tea into cups, adjusted the blanket on Varya's crib, sat next to Andrei on the sofa, and quietly said, "Home, home," he repeated. And in that short word, everything that had come before and after was contained. The airport, the delay, the back entrance, the silence, the ducks, the camera, the bench, the mittens on the radiator, the smell of milk, the soft light of the night lamp. Everything that makes life real, without loud toasts and expensive words, with a simplicity that is so difficult to cultivate, but which holds stronger than anything else. If Natalia were ever asked if she believed in fate, she would smile and reply, "I believe that sometimes you need to sit, cry, wait, and then enter not through the front door so that you can see the truth in time, and then you choose, either stay or go. I chose to go." And she would walk on with the calm step of a person who has the most important things: her people, her home, and her peace.